You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, y'all? This is One Royal Way here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Joel Penfield. Jordan Foote and Josh Keiser joining me as always, and today we are joined by a very special guest. We're grateful to have him on the show to get us ready for the 2023 season. Royals General Manager JJ Picollo joining us today. We can't thank you enough for your time. I know there are not many off days, even in spring training leading up to the big league season, so we really appreciate you taking the time to hop on with us.
Yeah, no problem, Joel. Looking forward to it. It's kind of odd that we're here with an off day, but we still got a team playing back in Arizona today with against the Cubs. So it's kind of a weird day, but we'll take the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen you talk Royals and obviously everything else around like news stuff, but just for our listeners, kind of get to know you personally here early on in this interview. Just want to learn about how you grew up in baseball and like what some of your favorite moments that helped you fall in love with the game, whether it was a moment, a player, something like that helped you kind of grow in the game.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Philadelphia, and during my from 7 years old to 12 years old, they had really good teams. I actually played the Royals in the World Series in 1980, so I was really a diehard baseball fan from the very get-go, and I was fortunate enough to have some really good coaches and influences in my life. My dad was a college baseball player, and he always encouraged me to play, and fortunate to have a good little league coach, a great high school coach, and had the opportunity to go on and play in college. But, from early memories, I moved from Philadelphia to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and I remember winning a championship, the Cherry Hill Championship. There was 5 different little leagues, and they'd have a tournament at the end of the year, and our team won that. It was called the Carpenter Cup. So it was kind of neat to go through that. I'm sorry, it was called the Mayor's Cup, not the Carpenter Cup. That was another event. But so winning was always a part of my childhood, and went on with a high school state championship. We actually lost 2 in a row, and then my senior year we finally won one. But it was always fun. But you look back on those memories, and I think it kind of drives you. And ultimately, the greatest memory was 2015, a World Series championship, which you always dream of as a player. You love to get to the big leagues and win a World Series. But then when my path took me into front office, the World Series was the ultimate achievement, and glad that we can say we won one.
Yeah, no, 100%. And speaking of favorites, I'm a home run guy. I like bat flips. I like celebrations, all that good stuff. We were having this conversation right before we jumped on. What's your favorite pitch, and why is that your favorite pitch out of all the ones?
Well, the what I would call the comeback fastball, the right-handed pitcher that throws that pitch to the left-hander's hip and it freezes them, and you see the buckle and it comes back. I mean, I was, like a lot of us, had a chance to watch Greg Maddux do that many, many times, and it's a tough pitch to throw, but when a guy has a feel for it, like Brady Singer. I mean, Brady's got that pitch. It's a special pitch, and I don't know how hitters can really defend that pitch. So maybe a boring answer, but that's the pitch I like the most.
I was in the same boat as well. That and getting a good changeup, also very fun. Making those knees buckle is huge to me. But speaking of bat flips, we just coming off the WBC. Obviously, did you get to watch much of the WBC? And if so, talking about moments, did you have any favorite moments? I'm going to caveat that you can't use Shohei versus Trout.
Okay. I did see a good amount of it. The games were coming on at 4:00 our time in Arizona, the ones that were on the East Coast. So we were able to see a good portion of the night games. As far as the biggest moment, Salvi's home run, I think, just because it's a personal thing for us. That was kind of neat. Trying to think of other moments. Well, I'm going to forget his name. When Japan hit the ball off the left center field wall to come back in that game, that was a tremendous game. That just seemed like a tremendous atmosphere. But the game seemed like it was under control, and then Japan came back and mounted 2 comebacks, if I'm not mistaken. But and the other thing is, that player was struggling, through the WBC, and everybody talked about how he never struggled. So you kind of root for guys to have those moments, and that was certainly a big moment. And he hit that ball pretty good. That ball was smooth.
Smoked. Yep. The 111 off the bat, 112.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crushed.
Then he hit that home run in the final that got out in maybe a second and a half. Just annihilated.
I was actually listening to that on radio, and I think it was Jim Bowden and Mike McFerrin were calling the game, and just their reaction to it on radio. It sounded like it was a bomb.
Yeah. Well, one last question about the WBC. One of the players that I was really excited to watch was Roki Sasaki from Team Japan. What were some of your thoughts on him, just from a scouting perspective? I mean, it's absurd what he's able to do at his age.
Yeah, we just in the market we're in, the Japanese player is difficult for us to scout or to land. But Louis Medina and Phil Dell are our two scouts that cover Japan quite a bit, so they've talked about him often over the years and how special he is. So it's kind of neat to see him play. I wish we could say, hey, we'll get in the market for this, but that's kind of a little bit of a stretch. But we're, obviously a talented player, and he'll do great things wherever he ends up.
Looking at what we've seen so far in spring training, I think there's been a lot of positive indicators of what this new coaching staff has been able to do. Have you seen anything beyond, what we're able to see from, watching us on TV or listening on radio? Like, so one of the first things I noticed was the K to walk ratio moving significantly toward more strikeouts, less walks, with what Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove have been able to do. Any framing or metrics for catchers, approaches from hitters? What have you been able to see that, you think could really translate into the regular season with this new staff?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is throughout the interview process, whether it be the managerial process or the pitching coach process, the same things were identified. Guys do their homework before they come in for interviews, but the same things were identified, and that was, we need to be in the strike zone more. And then that's easy to say, but how are you going to do it is the bigger question. And then, when we spoke to Paul Hoover about the bench coach position and coaching our catchers, he sort of connected the dots between how we need to target catchers and why his experiences have led him to believe what will help pitchers be in the strike zone. And they all connected with what all the pitching coach candidates said, what Q ultimately had said, and obviously Q and Paul have worked together before, so that he knows what's worked for them. But then behind the scenes, to watch the pitching, I'll call it a pitching team, led by Brian Sweeney, also with Paul Gibson's involvements, and his history with all of the pitchers was really important. And then Zach Bove has been very impressive, and as has Mitch Stetter, who's been with a lot of these pitchers as well. But to watch them collectively work and talk about things and then message the players, whether it be as a group or whether it be as individuals, has been fun for me to watch. There's continuity in what they all believe, and when pitchers start believing in a process, you got a better chance for it to succeed. And then Paul ties it together, just with the targeting, and we've made some adjustments with the distance. Our catchers are back behind home plate, so you cut the distance down, and hopefully you catch some of those strikes while they're still in the strike zone. Salvi's done a great job adapting to it. MJ's done it as well. Freddie Fermin, all three of those guys, we've seen improvement metrically in their framing numbers, and I would say fairly significant given the amount of time that it's been implemented. And MJ missed time with us, and Salvi missed time with the WBC. So taking that into consideration, I would think we would just continue to trend in the right direction from a framing standpoint. So you put all those things together, and then the positivity that Brian brings. He's he's very youthful. He's energetic. I mean, last night we're on the plane coming to Texas, and he bounced up, said, "I'm going to the back." He's going to talk to the guys. So I think guys appreciate that, and it's an environment that the pitchers are enjoying right now.
Yeah, JJ, this is going to be a long list of options for you to choose from. I'll let you pick one or two. You're going to have no shortage of them. What is, in your opinion, the most difficult part of your job, either in season, off season, during the spring? Kind of, what challenges do you face that you think are the most pressing?
Yeah, it's my attention certainly needs to be on the major league team. There's no doubt about that, but there's so many departments that we have. You have the major league operations, which Scott Sharp will deal with day to day as well. But you have scouting operations, and, amongst the scouting operations, you really have three departments: international, domestic, amateur scouting, and then pro scouting. So there's three departments there: performance science, you have your medical staff, player development's a whole nother animal. So there's so many different people that I have to try to connect with, communicate with. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's challenging. But that's where your directors are really important. They'll have the day-to-day conversations, but I like to think that I can reach out to as many people as I can and stay connected with them, so I know what they're going through. So it's the entire organization that I need to worry about. But the focus needs to be on the major league team and the progress of this team. So it's proven to be a little challenging. There are a lot of people that I left surprised yesterday that I had hoped to get with one-on-one, and I just didn't have the time to do it. So we'll connect, whether it's over the phone or Zoom calls, we'll connect. But it's just an ongoing line of communication. It needs to be open, so I can know where people are as employees, and that improves morale as well. So it's big picture that I have to keep in mind. But knowing also that the major league team has to make some progress in the coming years.
Totally. And kind of to that point, let's kind of transition into this 2023 roster specifics here. The other day, Nick Pratto, Michael Garcia, and Freddie Fermin all optioned kind of on the same day. What are they all kind of working on? What have you got them working on, and what's the assignment when they do go down to AAA, assuming that they'll, be very in the mix when it comes to that major league roster in 2023?
Yeah, they're each guy had a little bit different, a little different story on why they might have been sent down. Freddie was a matter of whether we wanted to carry three catchers or not. Ultimately, we decided we wanted flexibility so we can match up better, throughout the course of the season. But Freddie will get up at some point. I don't doubt that. I mean, he's MVP and Rookie of the Year, Venezuelan Winter League, and he's certainly making progress with the bat. He could always catch and throw, and he's starting to swing the bat well. So he's going to benefit by getting every day at bats. And then with Pratto and Michael, we shared with both of them, in some ways this is a very complicated decision, in some ways a very simple decision. Complicated in that they're both good and they both could help our team right now, but simple in the fact that they wouldn't be in the lineup every single day. And at their ages and what they're going to do for us in the future, the best thing for them would be to get every day at bats in AAA. And we know how this season goes. We're going to need them, and they're going to get significant at bats. So rather than looking at the short term, we felt looking long term over the 23 season, what do we need to see out of those players? And it was really accumulating at bats, whether it be in AAA or the major leagues. So when they do get moved to the major leagues, we're going to be as assured as we can that they'll get regular at bats when they do get up.
Circling back to Michael Garcia really quick, one of the storylines that kind of took me by surprise when you mentioned getting Michael Garcia in the lineup and putting him in center field at times. What went into that decision? Is that a positional versatility thing, maybe a long-term move, or just trying to get him in the lineup by any means necessary and just letting the bat work and just finding a spot?
A little bit of everything. We suffered the injury with Drew Waters. So our outfield depth got a little shallow. But with Bobby Witt Jr. on the team and Michael Garcia in our system, we feel like both of those guys can play center field. But what this did was it presented an opportunity for us to see Michael in center field in a time of need. Now, after that, we did sign Jackie Bradley Jr., who certainly can play center field. But it gave us a chance to see him in the outfield and see how he would react to it, not only physically, but also mentally. But he was wide open to it. It didn't bother him at all. And just watching his first day of workouts in the outfield, his footwork's outstanding. So I watched about 3 minutes of it, and I walked away said, I don't need to see a ball hit to him. He's going to be able to do this because his feet work so well. And then we did get a chance to see him go get a couple balls. So it confirmed our thoughts that he could do it. So positional versatility, if we reach a point in the season where we want to get him up and we need to get him on the field, say 5 times a week, the outfield may come into play. So now he'll be more prepared, and he will do that in AAA as well. He'll play shortstop, but he'll get some time in center. He'll get some time at third, just so wherever the opportunity comes, he's ready defensively to go do it. So that's, it's a good thing for us because he's such a good athlete.
Yeah, and you brought up Drew. First of all, how's he doing in his recovery? Like, when do you think he's going to be back up to full speed? And then secondly, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen in the outfield. I know that Kyle Isbell's been kind of favored and has a lot of positives to his game. JBJ's in the picture. How do you think that whole outfield situation is going to shake out once he's back?
Yeah, so first with Drew, he's doing well. He's progressing well. We have been deliberately slow. Just our history with the obliques, they tend to get him a second time if you don't handle it right the first time. So, and players want to get back because they start feeling good, and then they start pushing harder, and that's typically when they'll re-injure the oblique and they go back to square one. So we want to completely avoid that. So we've been very intentional in how slow we've moved. He is progressing this week where his swing's going to ramp up. He potentially can get in some games in Arizona by the end of the week. But even after that, he hasn't had a spring training. So when you look at the length of 30 games in spring training, if you take him along a typical progression, he's not going to play every day. So you're looking really into early May before we could even think about bringing him up to the major leagues. Now, he may go out on a rehab assignment prior to that, but we have at bats in Arizona to start with, and then he'll progress. And then as far as the outfield's concerned, I think we have the proper depth. When you lose a player, you start panicking and going, okay, what if we have another injury today? What are we going to do? And that's why we had to go get JBJ. And we've been really impressed with him, his influence in the clubhouse, the way he plays. He's a pro, and he has a really clear understanding. Matt Quachero, I think you guys know, we call him Q. Q's messaging the players, that's a big part of what he believes in. And when we sat down with JBJ the other day, he understands 100% of his role on this team. The at-bats, at times could be, 2-3 nights in a row, but more than likely he's not going to be playing 2-3 nights in a row. And he understands. He was a young player at one time, and he knows where our team is. But he's enjoyed being with us, and actually had the option potentially to leave, and he wants to be here, so we're happy to have him. And we've played him in left and played him in right because night to night when we look at our matchups, you may have him and Isbell in the lineup, but we do want to get a lot of time in center field. We want to see him play a lot. We want to see him play center field. So at the end of this year, we have a really strong evaluation on his ability to play center, where he is offensively. So it's a great opportunity for Izzy to kind of take the reins and run with it. Again, that's not to say he won't play a corner from time to time, but having as much versatility and flexibility as we can was the goal in bringing JBJ in, and being around him, he's the right guy to fill that role.
Having an uber athletic left-handed outfield is never a bad thing.
Yeah, no, we'll take it. We'll take it. And I really believe MJ is going to make strides out there defensively as well. He's taken a lot of pride in getting better out there. I think last year, what he goes through or what he went through, catching once or twice a week until Salvi got hurt was difficult for him because he's trying to learn how to prepare at the major league level for the pitchers. But at the same time, he knows 5 of those days or 6 of those days, he's only staying up if he hits. Mm-hmm. So as a young player, that's a hard thing to balance. But his mindset right now is he's embraced the role from a catching standpoint. He knows he needs to improve in right field, and he's committed to it. And we believe the metrics on him at the end of the year will be a lot better as well.
Kind of talking about injuries to players, I think the biggest one, especially lately, was the shoulder injury to Daniel Lynch. What is the update on him? I know he's been shut down for is it 10 days? I think is what I saw.
7 to 10. Yep.
7 to 10. Okay. So what's the update on him? Is there any further update after that?
Well, one, we were very relieved there was nothing really to report. So that was the big thing. It's basically shoulder discomfort, fatigue. Normal adaptive changes showed up in the scan. So that was really good news to hear. At the same time, you hold your breath when you see him walking off the field. You start thinking about long term, what's this going to mean? Short term, how do we make sure we can be in a position to fill his spot? But the news was good. So I would expect he'll be shut down, probably until like next Sunday. And then he'll start tossing again. It'll be a couple sides. He'll have to get a live BP, and then he'll have to start on a progression again. So without, putting a dead set stamp of this date, it's probably around May 1 before we can really get him back up to 5 innings and comfortably have him ready for the major leagues.
We've seen it mentioned quite a bit throughout spring training and even in the offseason about there being a more fluid big league pitching staff this year, kind of using Omaha as an opportunity to give guys rest and bring guys in, always have fresh arms in the bullpen. Were the options of Richard Lovelady, Josh Taylor, and Josh Staumont an early example of that, of something we will see at times throughout the year?
Yeah, and they were very difficult conversations, just not picking one over the other, but Josh, has a long history with us and, at times has been just dominant. But coming off a year where he didn't pitch a lot, actually all 3 guys, when you look at it, didn't have a full season last year. So that goes into a little bit of our planning because we need to make sure that we're not overusing them this year. They're not in a position to make 70 appearances. So we want to be careful. So that goes into the planning process a little bit. I think Josh Taylor and Richard Lovelady, from a velocity standpoint, there's a little bit more that's going to tick up as we get into April and May. We'll see the velocity come back a little bit. And with Josh, the message was really just strike one, because if he can throw strike one, the curveball's really good. He's throwing a split finger now. That there's a lot of positive results with that. He tinkered with a slider early in camp, but it really wasn't. It's a little bit of arm discomfort, so we backed off of the slider and actually just put it to the side because he doesn't really need it. It was just maybe a breaking ball that he could throw for a strike, but we'd rather have him healthy than having a 4th pitch. So we're encouraged with what he's doing. His velocity was good this spring. After the little tightness in his forearm, it receded a little bit, but then he bounced back. At the end, he was 98, 99, and the health is not a question. But the depth is going to be really important. It's a long year. More than likely when we start the season, we're going to be at 22 pitchers on our roster with a lot of flexibility. There's very few guys that we could not option to AAA. So that was definitely a goal. It takes an army to win the war, and that's kind of our approach. We want to have many options as we can at a moment's notice.
I am very intrigued by this split finger. If it's encouraging, I'm very into that idea.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'm excited to see that in real time. But I think we got one more question for you, kind of an uber serious one here. So on the homestand podcast, we saw that your cooking ability, you said, was not very good, but you could cook a good steak. You mentioned ribeyes specifically. So I guess the obvious question is, what is the secret to a good ribeye? Cooking a good ribeye, I should say.
So I have a really good mentor, TJ, in our kitchen in the clubhouse. He told me probably 3 years ago, he said, you heat your grill up, you get it as hot as possible, you can go. Season the steak any way you want, but one side, close the lid for 3 minutes, then flip it another 3 minutes, and then you cook it the rest of the way, depending on how much you want to go. But basically searing those steaks, 3 minutes on each side is the key to it, and it keeps the juices in there. And don't ever cut the steak to see how you let all the juice out. So make sure you don't ever cut the steak, and just trust that you got your timing down. So I've had enough practice, and I think I got my timing down.
I like it.
Well, I'll be testing that out as we get into warmer months. We can break out the grill and have a good time.
He's giving him a British accent. I think we were just talking to Gordon Ramsay right there. I think is what we saw.
Wow. JJ, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. We know how busy you are, so giving us 20 minutes really does mean a lot to us. So we look forward to this season coming up. I know Royals fans are very excited with opening day coming up on Thursday, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon sometime.
Yeah, no problem. We're excited as well, and appreciate your time.
All right, take care. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this, and we'll talk to y'all later this week as we do our season preview. So look for that on Wednesday. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts, bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.